Hi guys, my name's Laura. I am the human behind Page and Plate, and today I don't know what we're making because we are going to play a game called Quarantine Kitchen. So basically, here are the rules that Colin and I just came up with on a walk. He is going to pick 5 items that we had in our pantry before we knew that we had to be stocking up for a while. And I don't know what those items are, but I will have to make something with those 5 items. I'm allowed to pick 5 other pantry staple items to use to kind of supplement those. That does not include salt, pepper, or spices that anyone would have in their pantry. And then we're gonna eat whatever I make for dinner. So this will be very interesting. I'm gonna step off screen and Colin's gonna pick my 5 mystery ingredients. I don't know if I'm excited or like terrified for what you chose. Okay, well, there goes my plan for cauliflower for dinner tomorrow. Does vegetable stock, is that like a fair thing? Alexa, stop. Laundry's done. Right off the bat, I'm thinking some sort of skillet situation with some roasted cauliflower, cannellini beans, tomato, but then this flour is really throwing me off. Maybe what I'm gonna do actually is bread the cauliflower with this flour, some salt, pepper, red chili flakes. Am I allowed to use red chili flakes? Does that count? And then pan fry it in a little bit of olive oil and then stick it in the oven to kind of roast while I make a more like a tomatoey stew sort of thing. Let's just start going with this. I have to say, you were a lot nicer with this than I thought you would be. I'm also trying to get back to the whole eating a little bit more vegan thing, so I don't want to have to add cheese to this recipe to make it good, which is the challenge. Chop these up a little more. I'm just going to put some flour on there. Okay, maybe let's say that's a 1/4 cup. I'm going to toss, try to get it in all those crevices. I'm adding salt, pepper, and red pepper to this bowl. Hoping that's going to season the cauliflower, because what I'm thinking right now is that if I'm kind of doing like a cauliflower as the protein sort of dish, which is kind of how this is starting to look, these two things are going to be cooked together, so they're going to have a lot of flavor, so I don't want to have to cook the cauliflower in that mixture because I feel like I'm just going to lose that texture. So I'm going to try to season it independently, and that's why we're going to just pan fry it real quick and then get it going in the oven to crisp up and hopefully dehydrate. So then maybe what I'll do is after I pull it off the pan frying, I can actually give it another coat of salt just so I make sure that flavor is in there as it's cooking. How many ingredients have I used? I want to be able to use olive oil. I definitely want to be able to use an onion. I definitely want to be able to use some garlic. And then maybe I want to be able to use some, maybe I'm just going to stick with that for now. I'm going to save my onion skins just in case I have to make more vegetable broth. Ooh, vegetable broth. How am I going to use that? Maybe we'll add a little bit of it to the tomato sort of mixture to make it a little bit more tomato soupy. But maybe not. I might actually only use half an onion. I'm wondering if that counts as half an ingredient. It probably doesn't. So I thought about leaving the onions in rings, sort of like we did with shakshuka, but I don't think I want this to be like a shakshuka-y type of dish. I do think I want it to be a little bit more of like a sauce-based thing with the cauliflower as sort of like almost like a cauliflower parmesan type of situation, where this is like delicious and has that oniony, garlicky flavor, but doesn't have like chunks of onion or rings of onion that you're scooping up. In terms of what I'm gonna cook this in, I think I'm gonna use a super big, oh my onion god. Whew, okay. I'm gonna use for the onions, which are gonna be the base to my stewy soupy sort of sauce situation, I'm going to use my super big saucepan, and then for the cauliflower, because there's not a ton of it, because he only picked one of the bags that I had in the fridge, I'm gonna use the smaller saucepan. Oh my god, I have to step away from this. Okay, we're going to the stove because we have to. This is the smaller saucepan that I'm going to use to pan fry the cauliflower. And I think actually upon reflection, I'm going to use the cast iron pan to make my sauce, stew, bean, whatever dip situation, because I'm thinking maybe it might be nice to finish it in the oven with a little bit of a broil. I'm gonna be pretty generous with the olive oil because I really don't want to lose that flour coating that we added to the cauliflower. And I'm gonna wait for this to heat up just a little bit before I start that. I'm also simultaneously going to start heating my cast iron and add a significantly less amount of olive oil and get the onion going in there, hoping that I don't have to cry in on camera. Okay. I always start onion in a pan before I put the garlic in because garlic tends to burn a lot more easily, so I want to get the onion familiar. Ooh, and for one of my extra ingredients, I'm also going to grab an open bottle of red that I have on hand for cooking purposes so that I can add it to this sauce situation. I'm trying to decide if I want pasta involved here. Yeah, okay. Okay, let's add some pasta. Oh, remember, when we're cooking pasta, the water should be as salty as the sea. So I'm gonna put a lot of salt in there and then pop a lid on for that to boil. This olive oil I can feel is getting really hot. Like if I can hover my hand about here and I can also start to see sort of some ripples in it, that's when I know it's ready. And I'm also gonna preheat the oven to 350. So I'm gonna start putting this cauliflower in. I didn't put enough oil in that it's gonna completely submerge in the oil. That's called deep frying. Right here, we're just doing some pan frying. Cool, and I think that actually the smaller the pieces, the better, because that's more surface area that they're gonna have per piece to really crisp up. I'm also gonna be careful not to crowd the pan because I know that stuff gets crispier if you give it some room to breathe. So I'm gonna stop there for now. All right, shout out to Baker Miller. I've been getting coffee there. It's a great walk, lovely people. Shouldn't be drinking coffee this late, but Colin's changing the laundry. He'll never know, it's fine. Let's talk garlic. So I know I want this to be a pretty strong garlic flavor because tomato is a wonderful flavor and one of my favorite ingredients, but they don't bring a lot to the table by themselves. So I need to add onion, check, some garlic, and a lot of salt. If you were to add the garlics just like this, with the cloves pretty whole, it would add a really mild garlic flavor. But the smaller you chop up your garlic, the more that garlicky flavor is gonna permeate throughout whatever you're making. So I'm gonna try to slice and dice this to be a little bit thinner, while remembering that I have this going and I need to keep an eye on that. Okay, garlic in the pan, give that a stir. And let's check on our cauliflower. Ooh, this is getting super nice and crispy. So I'm just gonna give this stuff that's in the pan now a little rotation. I'm also going to grab the sheet tray so that I can just stick them right on and pop them in the oven so that they can really be cooking as we're focusing on sauce and pasta situation. I'm probably going to deglaze this pot. Deglaze is when you have something cooking and it's leaving those little like delicious brown bits on the bottom. And then you pour a liquid in there. Sometimes it's alcohol, usually it's alcohol, but it can also just be water or broth. And then you use that broth to kind of scrape up the little bits that are left on the bottom of the pan to create a sauce that has the flavor of whatever you just cooked. So for these onions and garlic, they're gonna start to leave a little bit of that brown residue behind. And when I deglaze the pan with a little bit of the broth and a little bit of the wine, those two things are gonna pick up that flavor a lot more. So right now I'm not super worried about the cauliflower cooking through necessarily. I really just want it to get some color, some caramelization so that I can pop it on the tray and then have the oven take care of the cooking. So I'm gonna start pulling the tinier pieces out because I don't want them to just like die. I think this is gonna add a really good flavor. I'm pretty excited. Something else I'm thinking about as both these things are kind of sizzling on the stove is when I want to add the white beans. If I add them to this onion and garlic mixture and kind of mash it in a little bit, it'll add a really nice kind of silky, creamy texture to the tomato dip that I'm making. But I'm also thinking that it could be a really nice thing to add at the very end to add a little bit more of the texture. But the more I think about that, the more I want them in here to add sort of that creaminess. I am making a pasta sauce, and I think the pasta is gonna fulfill that textural role I was talking about. So I am gonna go get those. I'm gonna drain them first, and then I'm gonna add them. I also think that'll allow me to season them a little bit more with these aromatics, rather than just tossing them at the end and counting on some salt to permeate through. I love cannellini beans. Although not as much as I love chickpeas, and I feel like that's kind of unfair. These are definitely already sort of a little bit mashed, so I think this is the right call to get them cooking in. It'll just be a little nicer of a texture when you put it over pasta. Let's check our cauliflower situation. I am gonna add some extra salt right now because I know that those beans are gonna soak up a lot of flavor. I think I'm also gonna add pepper and red pepper just so we're carrying through the spices from the cauliflower into this part of the dish as well. That's something I think about a lot to try to build flavor, especially when you don't have meat involved. Maybe I will put some cheese in this. Ooh, I can actually hear that it starts sizzling in the oven as well, which is making me excited for the texture at the end of this whole adventure. This will probably be the last batch of cauliflower, which is good because having 3 things on the stove that I need to remember to check, generally not a successful thing for me. You know what? Screw it. We're crowding the pan. It's fine. As these beans are starting to cook down, I'm noticing that they are starting to stick to the pan a little bit. So I'm going to start treating them a little bit more roughly with the spoon and just kind of smash a little bit so the texture gets a chance to kind of develop before I add the tomatoes, which are pretty gonna much take over as the most high maintenance part of this dish. I think I made the right choice in terms of what to do with these beans because they were canned. They already had a lot of that moisture in it. If I was making them fresh, I definitely would have waited to add them. But for now, I think this is the right call. But I'm also starting to think about what I want to prioritize the deglazing with the wine or the stock. Like, which one do I want to be a more prominent flavor? And I think it's going to be wine because I know that this red wine will go really well with the tomatoes and just kind of make it a really hearty, nice dish. This bean stuff is getting very, very, like, all the liquid has evaporated, which is why it's probably hard to see what's going on. And that's how I know it's time to add a little bit more liquid because it's starting to cake onto the bottom of the pan in a way that's not very attractive. So I'm going to first turn over my cauliflower because that's in a little bit more immediate danger. Let's start with wine. I also think it's always nice to use red wine when you're dealing with tomatoes because you don't have to be concerned about what kind of color it's going to add. Like if you're making risotto, you want to stick with white wine or else you have a weird purpley risotto. I'm just going to eyeball this until I think it looks good. That looks good. I'm going to add the tomatoes pretty quickly after I deglaze as well. This looks very brainy right now. Something was just on fire. What was on fire? Okay. I'm super excited to use some of the vegetable broth. Because it was a really delicious batch. I added miso, which I think did a lot. Again, we're just guessing. The other thing I know I have in the back of my head is, that was probably about a cup, maybe 2 cups, is that I know I have tomato paste, so if I need to thicken it back up again, I have an extra ingredient, I can do that. And now that I know I'm going saucier so that I can have it coat the pasta, I'm also thinking like adding more liquid, never a bad thing. Cauliflower, cauliflower, cauliflower. So now that the cauliflower is all on the sheet, I'm just going to give it a tiny extra bit of salt, just so I know it's well seasoned. And also I want to really maximize the kind of proteininess of this because this is going to be my protein for the sake of this dish. So back in the oven it goes. This is starting to look very much like a soup, which is kind of good because I want it to be sauce textured, but also it's a little bit thin for me right now. I'm hoping that as it boils down, the beans are going to add a little bit more of that sort of thicker, more dippy element, but I think adding tomatoes is also really gonna help with that. Tomato puree coming in hot. I also just realized that I'm gonna wanna put some pasta water in this. I don't know if you've heard, but you're not supposed to throw away pasta water, because if you add a little bit of the pasta water after the pasta has cooked to the sauce, what you're actually doing is taking water that you've added some starch to and incorporating it in the sauce so that it adds a little bit of gloss, first of all, but then also the pasta will stick better to it. I'm going to cook the sauce off by itself. I'm gonna cook the pasta off by itself. I'm gonna drain the pasta, reserve a cup of the water, add it back to this sauce, and then I'm going to toss it and the pasta, put it in a baking dish, and then add some cheese on top and bake it off sort of like a baked bean ziti, and then have the cauliflower just be kind of like a delicious, like crispy, crunchy element on top. I hate when people use cauliflower as a substitute for meat, like in cauliflower parmesan or something, and they don't treat it well, so it's just kind of mushy. So I'm gonna avoid that by not incorporating it until literally the very end. The ingredient picker of the day has chosen Ziti. Taste and adjust. Ooh, the wine is coming through in a really, really lovely way. It also needs more of everything. I'm gonna start with salt, because sometimes salt is like the thing that you didn't really realize is missing, and it changes the entire flavor profile. Going generous on the red pepper. Lately I've been really craving some spice. I'm gonna also add some paprika to this. Smoked paprika might be my favorite spice. So fennel seeds. I think I've used up all my ingredients now also. But this is starting to look like some super, super delish spaghetti sauce. Okay, so I'm going to also cook this pasta a little bit under, because I know I'm gonna put it in the oven. The pasta is to the point where it's like just cooked on the outside, and I'm gonna pull it off now. I'm gonna drain this, reserve some water, and bring it back to the stove to mix. So here's how this is gonna work. I'm gonna pour this in here, nearly overwhelming the pan, but not, which is important. Stir to incorporate it, and then little by little take some sauce and incorporate it into the pasta. I'm going to probably not end up using all of the sauce, which is great, because then it means that if we decide to make pizza later this week, or if we want pasta again for whatever reason, we can just use this. The sauce has this really nice glisten, which tells me that putting the pasta sauce in, or the pasta water in, was a good move. And now I'm going to just start taking it over, ladle by ladle. Okay, it looks to me like not enough sauce, and also that it might not be thick enough at this point. I think that's gonna be good, because as the pasta cooks more, it's gonna need that extra liquid to finish cooking without like completely dehydrating the beans in the sauce. Worst case, we're just gonna get some nice thick, delicious sauce. So I'm gonna just kind of cover it at this point. Wow, my stove looks like I murdered someone. Cool, 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 cool. This is why I can't be vegan, because I say to myself, I'm gonna eat less dairy today, and then 4 hours later, I'm making dinner with cheese in it. It's fine. Goat cheese, maybe that'll be good. We'll love a good goat's cheese. I currently have the oven on 350. I might turn that up a little bit just so the cheese melts. I'm going to bump it up to 375, and we'll check it in 15 minutes. Okay, about 20 minutes later, this beautiful dish came out of the oven. I'm really pleased with how the sauce seems to have thickened. That worked exactly according to my spur-of-the-moment plan. The cheese on top is nice and browned, and this cauliflower, it has been crisped within an inch of its life, in some case a little too much, like this guy, but that's okay. Oh my god, it's so good. So what I'm gonna do to serve it basically is just kind of sprinkle this crisped up cauliflower over the top and add a little bit of crunchiness and different flavor, and then spoon it out on plates. That went far better than I could have imagined. I started with flour, vegetable stock, cauliflower florets, tomatoes, and cannellini beans. I added olive oil, wine, salt, pepper, onion, garlic. Oh, I guess cheese. But we said salt and pepper doesn't. So olive oil, never mind. I'm seeing equations in front of my face. I'll write it all down. It will be there for you. You will get this recipe. Thanks to Colin for playing along. He really doesn't have a choice because he's stuck here with me for the foreseeable future. And if you have questions about what to cook during your quarantine lifestyle, hit me up, let me know. Otherwise, we'll go back to regularly scheduled programming after this. Oh, we're perfectly. Oh, right now.